Thanks for at least the temporary security from Zarin until Paul, does Paul show up? Is he going to be? Yeah, and this is the study session for the Town Board of Estes Park, or the Town of Estes Park Board, however I say that. And our first topic is revised policy 601, spending authority and limits, presented by Director Zimmerman, who's already up there and ready to go.
Mayor, before we launch, I'm going to check the code relative to a quorum and make sure we're on the right path.
Yes, please do. And as far as the study session, it really just comes down to consensus, perhaps on direction, which, as I understand it, trustees can watch the recording even after the study session and perhaps submit a public opinion on a consensus. But Director Zimmerman, go ahead. Are you okay with us proceeding? Since there's no action here?
One moment.
Okay, we'll hold.
In real time, 4 members of the Board of Trustees shall be a quorum for the transaction of business. No business shall be transacted except when a quorum is present, but a smaller number may adjourn the meeting to another time. So I read transaction of business broadly, unfortunately, and I think that would include discussing matters even if there's no final decision on them.
So are you saying, I didn't hear a couple words in there.
Sure. Because in my reading, unless it, and this is me off the cuff, I'm just pulling this up now, but to me, even discussing matters that are before the board in an official way like this is transaction of town business. So I would suggest that we pause until we have a quorum. Unfortunately, it's not advice I like to give.
But, you're saying because we only have 3, but
Correct.
4 is a quorum.
4 is a quorum.
Yeah. Okay, then we are waiting for Cindy, Trustee Youngland, and I will text her. Yeah, because we checked with her. She's supposed to be here. There's a big bag of chocolate if anybody needs any. So.
Mr. Mayor, how are you going to dress up for Halloween?
I have a real nice top hat. That'll be the start. The rest will be a surprise.
Mayor, I do know Trustee Youngland is coming. She might be a little late. She's coming from a work function down the hill.
All right. Well, in the meantime, we'll just make small talk and social chat. We've got Halloween coming up on Friday, and I think at 4:15 Elkhorn closes, or parts of it. And from 5 to 7, of course, is the famous, the merchants can hand out all kind of goodies and stuff. And I of course, become a kid at that point, so I'm allowed to take all the goodies too. So make sure you have an extra one for me. So that is an important item. I submitted a column to the papers today. I've been negligent the last couple months. Last week I had a very short micro column that said, vote, everybody, I want 100%. And you know where that'll lead. But the more people who vote, the better off we are, the better representation of the citizens' opinion. If you have a high percentage in these off-year elections, you tend to get a much lower turnout, and I don't want that to happen. So that's happening. I submitted another column just today that you might see, and it talks a little about having a positive impact every day on the world around you, and talks a little about wisdom and where you see it. And I made mention a couple times in there how much tremendous wisdom I see in all generations, post-millennials and, what are they? They're Z, right? Is post-millennials or Z now? So I still call them post-millennials. But millennials and post-millennials, I just know so many brilliant ones and have worked with so many brilliant ones who that I have great faith in the future. And also all the other generations have their fair share of wisdom.
Trustee Youngland is in town and will be here momentarily.
Oh, okay. She hasn't answered my text yet. Oh, no, I am almost at town hall. As long as she answered mine before yours, that's all I ask. So. Yeah, I can, just give me a topic. I can talk for 20 minutes on any topic, improvisation. So, just you go ahead and name the topic if you don't like the ones that I'm choosing. I do actually have a timer that we may attempt to use. Now, the difficulty of this timer is I can't see it, though I actually have a mirror down here and I tested it in my office and I can set up the mirror in a way where I can see it. On the other hand, I could also use Travis and Dan to say when the time has come, and that would probably be technically a little bit easier. And so that is a new addition. We do not need that for the study session, so I won't turn that on yet. And it has a little remote control, so I can reset it and start it over again. So we're just going to get more and more wonderfully disciplined at that on the sessions where we do have the opportunity to talk. You want to give me a topic, anyone, or?
No one out there?
Well, yeah, we're technically not in session at this point, or are we in session?
Mayor, I would suggest that we not discuss town business. That,
Correct.
While 3 members are here, but not 4.
Correct. So we can't really answer anything or discuss anything that really relates to town business. But if you want to ask me, where my band's playing next time, I can give you updates on things like that. Yeah, I believe that Linda and I share the road, are playing at the Lumpy Ridge Public House at 2 o'clock on Halloween. I say I believe because if it's 20 degrees, we might not be playing out there. My fingers will be frozen. The old Dennis Tobias Band, if anybody remembers that one, will be playing this weekend on a final kind of reunion tour. It's a little bittersweet, but that will be at the Legion this weekend. I think that's on Sunday. So there you go. Now I gave you the arts update. Speaking of arts, the Colorado Creative Designation that our Estes Arts District received, I think I mentioned that in today's column, in fact. And that's just a wonderful thing. They've been trying to get that for about 3 years, 7 different arts districts in different towns across Colorado received that from Governor Polis, and it really is a great thing. Not only can they use that designation on all of their advertising and projects and everything that they do, but it gives them the opportunity for more grants that they can write for different types of art support types of things. So that's a wonderful new item too. There you go. How am I doing? So I can't hear you. Here, come on up and yeah, my hearing aids aren't charged yet. So. And here comes Trustee Youngland, so we'll be in session very quickly, but what was your question?
They told me to either send it to the town clerk.
Yeah.
Or just bring it in.
Yeah, you can give it to the town clerk and she will distribute to us. Trustee Youngland, you make us official.
Yay!
We now have our official quorum, and this study session is in official session. And I'll hold for a second. There we go. And we now will turn over topic number 1 to Director Zimmerman of the Finance Department.
Good afternoon. Tammy Zerman, Finance Director. So today I wanted to go over some proposed amendments to our Finance Policy 601, where it defines our spending authority and the limits on the actual dollar amounts. And our current policy in 601 defines the spending authority by specific position titles and does not address change orders related to contracts or purchase orders. And so today we're seeking the town board input on two parts. One, on updating the organizational spending authority, and then two, adding in language and defining the limits for change orders. So the first part, on updating the organizational spending authority, the proposed amendment would have delegation to the town administrator assigning the departmental spending limits, and it would be capped at $50,000 for department heads. Then we would retain the language related to the $100,000 limit for the town administrator and the town attorney. And in Policy 601, we would strike out all of Table 1, which goes title by title and their cap on their spending limit. And so some key policy language that was added in the policy was the town administrator is authorized to set and administer the purchasing limits for department job titles and roles, provided that they are no greater than $50,000. The second part is where we're defining basically what a change order is and how that affects the town. So we're adding the defined threshold for purchase orders and contract change orders, where department directors may approve up to a limit that's set by the town administrator, no greater than $50,000, or they go by the authorized board resolution for the contingency amount. And the town administrator is authorized to approve change orders up to $100,000, and any change order that goes over the $100,000 approval for the town administrator would need to go back to the board, unless it's specified that it's a larger amount in the contract. And so some key language that was added to the proposed amendment is the department directors may authorize change orders until the amended contract or purchase order reaches the limit set by the town administrator, and change orders that result in the total exceeding the contingency set by the town board will require presentment and approval by the town board. So some advantages of these proposed amendments are it would streamline our purchasing and contracting processes, reducing delays with having to go back to the board for any kind of title change. For instance, we have a title change in the police department where they have been on hold until we can get this approval of the amendment to Policy 601. And it would clarify some authority in relation to change orders where it's vague or it's absent right now. It would improve the accountability and project tracking, especially when it comes to contingencies for construction contracts. And it enhances our efficiency in using already board-approved project contingencies that we're putting in our ordinances or resolutions, maintains the exceptions that we have for budget-approved expenditures, where it won't stop our operating business with the utilities, debt, payroll, and insurance. Some disadvantages that might be with these proposed changes as it would shift some of the town board approval to the town administrator instead, and it would reduce the involvement in the day-to-day. And then one other possible disadvantage with the change orders would still require board approval when no contingency amount is pre-approved with the contract. And that is the end of my presentation. So I wanted to go back with the key input related to what I'm seeking in our study session today is with the proposed changes in the redlined policy, are we going forward with the updates to the organizational spending authority? That's number one. And number two, are we okay with the language in defining our change orders and the limits set with those?
So I really wish Frank was here, because this seems to me to be the ultimate policy question about the, where the town board's authority is delegated, and, and what the appropriate delegation amounts are. And so I'd like to understand a little better how we are supposed to evaluate that as a policymaking board to determine whether those amounts and levels are appropriate. And that may involve the town administrator, I think, in the discussion too. So I'd just like to understand better what the rationale and is there any comparison to peers in other communities so that we can make sense of what these numbers mean to us?
Mayor, Trustee Brown, so typically what will control is the staff purchasing authority. So that would be the purchasing authority that's delegated to the town administrator. The town administrator is then able to delegate within their span of control purchasing authority through the organization, understanding that at the end of the day, every single one of those levels is accountable to the town administrator, and I'm responsible for any purchase in this organization that I have delegated responsibility for, and of course the purchases that I've made. So there's the question here is really, from a historical perspective, we've always listed this table. This table has grown over the years to identify employees that are purchasing items regularly over the course of doing business. And the question becomes for the board, at what level do you want to be engaging in that conversation? There's, in your policy governance, one of the things that you reserve the right to is items of significant public interest or concern. So really, in my eyes, the question for the board at this point is the purchasing authority delegated past me something that you consider to be of significant public interest or concern? From my standpoint as town administrator, and I think Director Zimmerman's standpoint, the administrative distribution of this purchasing authority, really it's all under my authority, because at a certain point, if you're saying I have $100,000 of spending authority, anything $100,000 or below is happening at the staff level.
Right.
If you have concerns with how I'm distributing that purchasing authority through the organization, that would be a conversation with me. There is an argument to be made for the transparency of the process and saying, here are the employees in the town that have purchasing authority, and that's where the town board will have to make a decision relative to, is this a matter of significant public interest?
So I gather the main impetus, though, for these levels are practicality in the day-to-day administration of government. I mean, isn't that what it really comes down to, what you're trying to do when you set these levels?
Correct. So when we're setting levels and recommending levels to the board, what we're looking at is, does it make sense relative to the regular purchases that this particular position is making? So even if the positions are titled what would appear similarly from the outside, a museum director and a line crew superintendent, the cost of procuring materials for running an electrical utility is much higher than the cost of procuring day-to-day museum supplies. So there's a significant difference in the purchasing authority afforded those two positions.
Sure.
So from our standpoint, when we're bringing you a recommendation, or have brought you recommendations in this past for Table 1, we have put the purchasing authority at the minimum or the maximum. It's the minimum level required to actually do the job. So we don't want somebody necessarily to have $50,000 of purchasing authority if they're never having to make $50,000 purchases. Some departments have to make those regularly.
Okay. So I have one other comment, and it relates to the change orders. Now, it seems to me that, and actually Travis might apply this in this manner anyway, that change orders on a particular project should be aggregated to determine their compliance with the limits. so you can't do, successive $99,000 approvals in the same deal. And I suspect, just from a practicality standpoint, you would have approached it that way anyway. But
So we've discussed this intensively because there are some change orders where, so the question becomes, well, when does this become a game, right? When are you doing a $99,999 change order, and then 30 days later there's another one? When is that trying to avoid the aggregate change order versus when is that, well, this is just business? If we look at our utilities projects, one change order is likely to exceed that authority. So in that circumstance, we'd be coming back to the board with really every single change order. So the question is, how do you balance the large projects, the small projects, while still keeping the project budget within the board's approved project budget plus the contingency? And that's the balance you see us trying to strike as we formalize this change order process.
that raises in my own mind.
Your microphone.
Raises whether a percentage of the budget item should be the trigger in some way, although it gets more confusing that way. It's certainly simpler to have a fixed dollar amount, but it's, that's all I got.
I'm comfortable with the recommendations. I'm comfortable with my sense of the integrity of the town administrator to oversee those levels.
And I am too today, but I think that we have to look at this policy for whoever's in the role, and we have to look at it as a system and not really a person. So would the table exist under your authority if that change was in effect? You would still have a table and?
Yes, we would maintain the table would exist. It'd be a corable document. It's something we could put online as an FYI. I think it's fair to have your financial, the major financial guidance of the town available to the public without having to request it.
I think it is, because I think that it serves as a tool in another way by defining what the responsibilities are, the level of responsibility for different roles. It sure speaks to that, whether it's electrical expensive or it's whatever the museum is buying out. You insinuated that that's less expensive. So I think that it is valuable for that transparency piece. What is the frequency that you update the table? Why are we making this change? Is it burdensome for you to update this all the time, or what are we accomplishing by changing the policy?
I'll speak to it historically. It's a regular clip, but it's not more than probably once a year. So it's not necessarily happening all the time. It's not a huge burden to come forward to the board with the changes. It's in our eyes, a cleanup element that, well, we can aggregate this to the town administrator's authority, and then it just smooths it when we have to make a change. Is it the end of the world if we have to come back to the board every time? No, because it doesn't happen more frequently, just to be blunt about it. But it does simplify the process if we're just maintaining a table administratively under my purchasing authority.
Okay, well, it seems reasonable to me. A couple of things stood out for me when you described a significant public interest issue, and that is something that you would bring forward even if it was within that spending authority. So that is attractive. And is that captured in text in this, or is that
I
just?
want to be clear. When it's a town board, it's part of the town board policy governance. You have a list. I think it's about 12 items. I can pull it up here.
But that's a town board policy, not part of this policy.
It's correct. It's a policy governance items, and it's where you're reserving the right to authority, basically. And it has things like setting utility rates, major decisions. And the last decision is kind of a catch-all. It says items that the town board decides are a matter of public interest.
And that is largely would be in your discretion.
It's
to
within
say-
the board's
Well,
discretion.
we would have to review it, but it would be in your discretion to say, this one they're going to want to talk about.
And so let me clarify, with regard to the financial policy,
Yeah.
I would typically view setting and delegation of that purchasing authority below my purchasing authority as a town administrator authority.
Right.
I think that if the board wants to maintain authority over that delegation at each level, that would be the item of significant public interest. Not necessarily that we're
Not
gonna be
the-
evaluating
not the
every,
expenditure.
$90,000 expenditure and saying, is this an item of significant public interest or not? I suppose the board can always pull something up to its level. That's what that policy
So
says.
how would we be aware of that?
Just to be blunt about it, you're typically not aware unless it's explicitly called out in the budget of purchases that are under $100,000. Right now, that's true, because the purchasing authority goes up to my level. I can purchase within the set budget without impacting the town board's
And
priorities,
nobody even knows.
materials up to $100,000.
Yeah.
Now,
Unless
if
we
those
go
are
line by line.
associated with a major town board initiative or a
Right.
major town board project, that's not the case. That's where the judgment enters, is like, oh, okay, we need to go talk to the town board about this because it's a matter of public interest, or you've expressed that it's a matter of public interest.
It could be a $50,000 expense that's going to raise every eyebrow, or 92% of the eyebrows, and we should probably talk about it.
Sure, and
So-
then that's true with deprioritizing spending too. Like, we'll just take, at the next study session, we'll be talking about the results from the downtown Estes Loop traffic study. That's, I think it was a $7,000 study, well within my purchasing authority, not something that we would deprioritize without coming back to the board because you've articulated it as a town
Gotcha.
board objective. So that section is meant to be the board's catch-all to allow you to pull authority for things within the scheme of policy governance that you consider to be matters of significant public interest. So I think that if you were desiring to have the breakdown of that table 1 still within this policy, that would be the portion of policy governance that you would point to say, we think that this is, we should have this at the town board level. We think this is of significant public interest and it belongs as a town board policy.
So now you said two things. You said it could be, we probably could put that out, people could get it through Cora, or we could just make it available. So I think if we have a level of transparency where the public can understand if they desire, and many do, to understand how authority and how spending works, that I would buy into it. And I think we have an unwritten understanding that if it is of great public interest, you generally are very good about coming to the board and saying, stay tuned, pay attention. So I'm comfortable with these proposed changes in this policy. Thanks
I
for
will
the
mention that
details.
we do have the listing of expenditures that is approved by the town board on the consent agenda.
Oh, okay.
As we discuss this, and this is off base, so I don't want to take us down a rabbit hole, but what Trustee Eigel said makes me think that it might be good on our website to maybe restructure a page and just have a financial transparency page and have, with our new system, we're going to have the ability to generate a lot more kind of monthly report styles. And I think we could migrate a lot of our financial information that's kind of dispersed throughout the finance section of the website into a broader financial transparency page, and we could have our policies on there. None of it's secret, and it might make it easier for people to find these things that they would care about as matters of public policy.
And I think that you make some good points, Mark. You know, I feel very confident with you at your seat in making the decisions, but who knows down the road. But to the other note of having that on the website, I think is just another piece for people to understand how things work and who's spending power, that you can allow spending power to this much and then it comes to the board. It's a communication piece that I think is lacking. A lot of people don't understand how things are done and they may assume incorrectly. So why not put it out there? But I feel comfortable with what's been proposed. I don't, other than that, maybe putting those up on the website, I don't see any changes that really need to be made at this time.
And I would echo that point of view. That's my view as well, that it's really a good idea to delegate, subdelegate effectively the spending power like you are proposing. If not, your life could become untenable at some point. So I'm all in favor of that. I just wanted to clarify one thing, that what we're talking about is all spending of amounts that have been approved in the budget, right?
Correct. Any amendment to the budget has to come forward to the board. You will be seeing our end-of-year amendment shortly for the budget. That's where we articulate all of the changes that we're proposing to the town board for that budget. And in the budget, you set your spending priorities for the coming year. And there's sections of policy governance that speak to that budgetary authority and, of course, the appropriations laws we have here in the state of Colorado.
So, yeah, and so we have to budget it and we have to appropriate it, right? They're two separate steps, and as long as we're doing that, that's where our policy governance comes in, really, it seems to me, not the details of a particular expenditure, so that's why I like this.
Director, is there any more to your presentation?
No, there is not. I'll just explain a little bit further. We'll take the spending limit authority for each role, and that's what we key into our accounting system. So when somebody puts in an invoice or a purchase order, if it goes over their authority, it's kicked
Flags
on
it.
to the next
Yeah.
level. So we have that in place, and that's typically how most municipalities run with their financial system, to make sure that it's budgeted and that you have the proper spending authority limits.
I think you have the guidance you need from
Yes, I do.
this
Thank you.
quorum.
Okay. And we'll bring that forward with a formal change at the next meeting.
Right,
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll move on to item 2, overnight parking, and we have Manager Klein on that. Yeah, actually, we're ahead of time. I thought that 4:30 was when that one was supposed to end, so I didn't mean to shuttle you off any more quickly, Tammy. So.
Thank you, Mayor and trustees. Apologies to those behind you staring at the back of my head. That's lights bouncing off of right now. My name is Dana Klein. I serve as your parking and transit manager in Public Works. The item before you this afternoon is just a discussion about overnight parking, and it's an item that was approved by the town board in April of this past year. And the purpose of this tonight is just to kind of go through and review what we saw this year during that time and be available for questions. So what we ended up changing last year, or this year in April, was overnight parking prohibited, which is in the municipal code 10.04040, and that was approved by the board under ordinance 06-25. I can read you what we changed in there if you'd like, or it's in your, okay. And the overnight parking prohibited 10.040 says, A, no person shall park a vehicle, trailer, or recreational vehicle in any town-owned parking lot overnight or longer than 18 hours. Item B in that section is no person shall park a vehicle, trailer, or recreational vehicle in any town-owned street right-of-way within or immediately adjacent to the downtown commercial zoning district as defined in the development code, nor along McGregor Avenue south of East Wonderview overnight or longer than 18 hours. For the purposes of this paragraph, immediately adjacent includes the entire width of the street right-of-way bordering the downtown commercial district on at least one side of the right-of-way. Section C of that is exceptions, which says notwithstanding the foregoing, item 1, the Director of Public Works or designee may authorize overnight parking by parking permit or revocable encroachment permit. 2, the Director of Events and Visitor Services or designee may permit overnight parking at the events complex and its parking lots for contractors and participants in special events. So during the discussion surrounding this item, that's good. The board indicated they would like to revisit this topic after the season was completed, the paid parking season was completed. So our office did not receive any feedback or have any from the public once that ordinance was in place this season. I know in your packet there are a couple of public comments, and I'm glad that we got those to you in time. And I did observe vehicles parking in marked stalls and right-of-way out of the street in the Reclamation District and Manford areas this season, which was the purpose of that change last year was to, and I use the word decriminalize, which is not correct, but that was the intent of that, was that we made those parking spaces, and according to the former way this 10.040 was written, they were breaking, the rules and could have got a parking ticket. So during an overnight check that I did on Saturday, October 18th, from 1 a.m. to 4:30 a.m., I observed 14 vehicles parking on the streets or partially in the streets where there were no markings for parking, 21 parked on right-of-way out of the travel lane, and 111 parked in marked stalls or in downtown parking lots. Of those 111, 72 were in parking lots, and of those, all but 15 had permits on file at the time. 9 of them may have been part of the commercial hotel permits, but did not display that permit during that evening that I checked. So during that season, we issued 39 downtown residential commercial loading or commercial lodging permits, 24 overnight permits for downtown residents, 48 for temporary guest passes, and 108 7-day parking structure permits. And that concludes my part of this presentation.
Do they,
Mayor.
in those cases, have to,
I just want to be clear, because it could be confusing to someone looking at our 2 items on the agenda tonight and then not seeing the agenda item later this year for the commercial loading permit. The overnight parking permit or the overnight parking discussion we're having right now is not related to the post office challenges. That is the changes that we made to the commercial loading permit, which we do have on a future study session. This item does not pertain to that particular discussion because those challenges are a result of changes that we've made to the commercial loading permit. So I do want to be very clear about that because there were 2 changes last year. There were the changes that Manager Klein has discussed here, and then there was the commercial loading permit change, which is what's generated the concern from the post office.
Thank
But
you for that clarification.
just a clarification point, and thanks, Travis, do they need to display a permit, or is it based on license plate like most of the paid parking?
Thank you. Yes, the downtown residential commercial lodging permits, typically we issue a dash permit for those because they may be just transient, temporary folks that are in those, 1 or 2 days, during the weekend type of thing. So usually that permit is held by that permit holder who leaves it in, I'm not sure where at the property, and then somebody puts that on the dash.
Oh, okay.
And I think a couple of
So it's not
hotels in the
locked
area.
to a certain license plate or a pair of license plates?
Correct.
Yeah.
The other ones are the downtown resident are locked to a license plate. The temporary guest passes are locked to a license plate, and the 7-day parking structure permits are locked to a license plate.
Okay.
Correct.
Dana, just a point of clarification, because I know the town board has received a comment today from the proprietor of Green Jeep Tours. That is a commercial loading permit issue too as well, correct?
That would be, part of policy 842. That would be a commercial loading
So
permit.
not with regard to the changes that we're talking about now, but the same concerns that the postal contractors have, correct?
I believe so, yes.
And I
That
believe
is
we
correct.
received from another one of the tour companies a similar letter a couple days ago. So
That is correct.
we've got that.
I just want to make sure that we understand if all of the concerns that we received from the public today are relative to the policy 842 and not the overnight parking change.
Right.
I believe that may be correct, but they were attached to this, so I wanted to acknowledge that there was public comment received on this.
So we have confused the issue by scheduling this debrief on the same night.
Yeah.
This is a separate issue. We will hear from the postal contractors tonight, and then we will be discussing policy 842 on November 25th at the study session.
Yes.
For those that were parked without a permit showing, what action occurred to them? Were they ticketed?
On that night, I did not ticket because I was
Just
simply observing.
Collecting statistics?
Yes,
Yeah.
what I could do in that case is contact the police department, who would then go out there and issue a ticket, or we could have our team do that during the paid parking season.
So in general, your observation for overnight, and maybe I didn't hear this in the presentation so far, is there plenty of available parking spaces when you took that statistical tour?
Absolutely, yeah,
Lots,
during that
lots
time.
and lots?
Well, yes, and the ones that were in the marked stalls in, for instance, the reclamation district on first, second, or third and fourth that have marked stalls, there were spaces available when
Yeah.
I did that observation between 1 and 4.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, my question is, do you have data on how many citations have been issued for violating the overnight parking rules this season?
I do not. I could get those from the police department.
I just think we need that to ascertain the scope of the problem and also the extent to which there have been complaints filed about overnight parking, because I would think most citations would be generated by a complaint to the police department. So I don't know how we can make a lot of sense of this without getting that data.
Okay.
We can gather that data, Trustee Brown, and we'll also see if we can get a hold of warnings. I know that this is also a tool to prohibit camping within our parking lots. As you all know, van camping or stealth camping, whatever you want to call it, is growing in popularity. And it's challenging to enforce those limitations if you don't have prohibitions on overnight parking, because if the police knock on the door and nobody answers, there's no way for them in most cases to ascertain whether anyone is in the vehicle. And if you don't have a prohibition on overnight parking in the lot, then there's really no enforcement mechanism. So you could very quickly run into a situation where our parking lots become competitors for our local campgrounds.
Yeah, that, I was going to ask about, what's data do you have about the warnings, the tickets, things like that? Because is it sign issue? Where are we failing the public on this? Do we need more signage? Do we need more, when we see that data, hopefully we'll know, are they out of state? Are they, in town people that just don't have a place to be? That kind of thing, I think will help us know then the approach to why we're seeing so many. I mean, I was surprised at those numbers. So, because that was in October, I
that
believe
was
you
the-
said.
That was just last Saturday.
Yeah. I
The
can't
18th.
imagine what it would be in the middle of summer. But so I would like to see those numbers too. I think it'll help kind of dive in more as to why, are they warnings? Are they multiple ticket holders? Are they the same vehicle? Things like that. I think more data is needed to
Okay.
be able to really decide how to move forward. And the education piece, I'm wondering if we're not doing a good enough job and how we can get the word out.
Mayor, Manager Klein, just to be clear, we have always prohibited overnight parking in downtown lots, correct?
That is correct. We
So I
actually
think-
relaxed the,
And it's a challenge because this was a town board request many months ago, but the request you made of us earlier this spring was to come back to talk about how the changes you all had made in the code, the changes that Manager Klein ran through, specifically with regard to outside the downtown corridor, have had impacts, or if there have been impacts, positive or negative. So we can certainly talk more about downtown overnight parking and the scale of a problem it is outside of the context of the downtown loading permits, the commercial loading permits. We have not made changes this year in terms of how we are looking at regulating overnight parking in our downtown parking lots.
Yeah, so I certainly support a general prohibition on overnight parking. That seems kind of a no-brainer to me. And that the key to it is to make sure that we have the right permit system in place for others that may need to use that. And that's kind of what we're going to be talking about the post office, I think, and these other comments we've had. So defer any further discussion on that, but that seems like that's the big issue here. We certainly don't want people camping in our on our lots, I get that. And, but without some evaluation of what people are, what sort of enforcement is needed in that regard, it's hard to make much more sense of it, so.
And to your point, Trustee Brown, I probably didn't do a good job of explaining that, but I saw this as encouraging that we had these vehicles parked in marked spaces and right-of-way in those areas that were previously in violation. So the ones that were in the lots, most of them did have permits. So I saw that as encouraging from the way it was before the season.
I was just going to ask about how you measured the success. How did it feel successful to you? And you just kind of said that right now. But was it a shift from people parking in the same spot before the change, it was against the law? After the change, it was permitted by the law? So it was the same number of vehicles? Or was it an increase? Or I'm
Sure.
I'm not going to drill you for the answer right now. I would like more information to be able to measure whether or not our decision was successful or not. And I would like to hear a little bit about one of the topics we talked about before, which was, what about those unexpected circumstances where someone ends up parked overnight downtown? What's the mechanism to say, yeah, here's what happened. I decided it was a good decision to park overnight and walk home. My vehicle had a mechanical problem. I parked overnight. Parking overnight should not be something you're afraid of going up the river for. So I think that we have to have a way to address that. And I would like to know what that is. So there's not a fear or a concern about the law is coming and they will take you.
Correct.
Because that perception from when you're looking at a sign that says, don't do this, and you're in a town you're not familiar with, can be pretty overbearing. So I want to be able to measure success. What's the data that will allow us to determine, did this succeed? One night's data may or may not be enough to do that.
Correct, and I'm looking back at my March 15, 16 observations from 11 p.m. to 2:30 in the morning, and it was actually more vehicles on the street and the right-of-way, 21 on the street and 20 in the right-of-way, and 127 in marked stalls. This was before the paid parking season. But what this essentially told me is these 41 vehicles and some of these others that didn't have permits at that time would have been subject to a municipal code violation, and we essentially made it so that they can park in the marked stalls outside of the commercial district.
So did we need to make the change, and were we successful? If we're not going to enforce it or write tickets or follow up with it, we didn't change their behavior. I guess that's where I think we're on. But, so I need more information too, just what they said.
Okay.
So thanks for bringing the data to us that you've provided so far.
You bet.
We seem to run the gamut on questions there, and we're ahead of schedule on this particular topic. The postal folks are not scheduled until 5:30 for their presentation. Had I had a sense of rhythm here, we could have aimed to start that a little bit earlier, so it wouldn't be such a compressed time.
Could we move the annexation policy up so that the post office can be at a 5:15 level?
Is that allowable, Town Attorney Kramer? Can we change a study session order?
Yes.
Yeah,
Mayor, I suggest that be a positive action because I know the postal folks
yeah.
have been, we noticed a time for them, and I think
Yeah.
it's fair to try to hit that time as closely as possible. I will go get Director Correcchia, and I'll be right back.
All right, we'll stay online and we'll just pause momentarily. Maybe I'll give more community updates, like Cindy, you missed I was really on a roll for giving a lot of good, like the Colorado Creative Arts District designation for our Estes Arts District, and a little bit about wisdom and a little bit about a few other things. Rocky Mountain National Park, in case folks don't know, the Beaver Meadows Visitor Center and the Kawanichi Visitor Center are actually open with state-funded dollars that Governor Polis was able to bring forth. That will last until, I believe, Saturday, and they will review this on a week-by-week basis. So I do not know whether they've got a steady funding source, but there was a ranger down there and a few other helpers and folks, so it was actually in operation in a simple way. They don't have all of the different activities that people can sign up for or the different shows, but so that's happening out there. The gate staff and others continue to operate with the fee bank that has been collected by past fees, but they continue to not collect any fees. And so at some point those fee dollars will run out, and that staff would not continue to have gainful employment. Hopefully, our National Congress comes to terms before that point, but that's kind of the status of the park at this point. There are individuals who are not collecting a paycheck at this point, and at a certain point, I worry that there's a potential of people, for the good of their career and their family, having to consider other employment, and that would be a sad thing to have that happen. So that's kind of the stuff that I'm hearing about relating to Rocky Mountain National Park. In the meantime, I preach to anybody who's going to the park anytime: pack it in, pack it out, treat it very well with all great respect. I hope you do that all the time anyway, but especially with visitors who it isn't their backyard, who are coming up here and participating in the park. Treat it with great respect to the resources and the wildlife and the other visitors. Follow all the rules. Do what is right, even if nobody's watching, as you've heard that cliche before. The turnstile of my brain will come up with another topic very soon, so watch out. Oh. Is this just a single copy? And will this be posted publicly then? Yeah, this appears to be a stack of one-page statements that ex-business, signed by apparently those business owners, do not have an issue or problem with Green Jeep Tours, LLC, parking their vehicles overnight in Weast parking lot. And so it looks like a stack of similar documents from a variety of businesses with that same statement on it. All right. Eventually, I'll put everybody to sleep with my just random updates of items of public interest, but we can now get back to business here. We're ahead of schedule, so thank you for the flexibility. Mr. Hornbeck, we have you on for annexation policy and potential IGA with Larimer County.
Thank you, Mayor, trustees. Sorry to keep you waiting. So, as you recall, we spoke about this recently, about a month ago, with Planning Commission. Have some updates for you. The annexation policy has been updated based on feedback at that meeting. Quickly run through those updates. I think they're pretty straightforward. Built environment, we had a correction on public services versus town services. On the economy section, we removed the housing-related items to cover those simply under the housing heading. Onto the housing section itself, we updated some statements to add things, statements such as when feasible, when appropriate. Also updated for clarity. Health and social well-being section was removed from the policy. And transportation and infrastructure changed will to should. So hopefully those reflect direction received. The next item was the code amendment on extraterritorial water service. So to summarize the modifications proposed, we are stating that annexation is required rather than if required. We're also assigning town board as the decision maker to potentially waive any annexation requirement. And the process for that would be town administrator would first need to find annexation not in the best interest of the town. Administrator could bring that to the board for consideration to waive annexation. The code currently requires properties ineligible for annexation to sign a water tap agreement. Part of that agreement is agreement to annex when eligible. That requirement will remain unchanged. The third component was a potential IGA intergovernmental agreement with Larimer County. Staff with Larimer County and the town have been engaged in a few discussions on a potential IGA. We've identified two potential benefits of an IGA based on the model used what Larimer County has with other jurisdictions. One, it would essentially give the town the right of first refusal on certain land use applications where the county would not process those unless the town first denies annexation. The town largely has this authority by default due to or when water is requested or needed. We could then require annexation or the TAP agreement as previously mentioned. The other potential benefit, the county could agree to apply certain town plans to county development. Since we share a comprehensive plan already, that's largely taken care of. One area we identified this could be beneficial is transportation-related items. If there were a road or trail identified in the town plans or a property in the county could potentially reserve future right-of-way, require easements for trails, things like that. One of the major components of an IGA would be to establish a growth management area or similar tool. This would define geographically where urban or town level development would occur, where it's appropriate, and therefore where annexation is envisioned. These are tools largely used in communities down the hill with much stronger kind of outward development pressure and kind of flat developable land. Circumstances we don't obviously have here in abundance. Finding consensus amongst the community on where to draw that line would likely require robust public engagement, as well as a series of conversations between trustees and the Board of County Commissioners. We think such an effort would potentially be more appropriate with future updates to the comprehensive plan rather than a standalone effort. County and town staff seem to be in agreement that the IGA would likely provide marginal benefits and is not a high priority at this time. Should town board and the county commissioners wish to pursue an IGA, it could be added to future work plans. County staff indicated limited availability at this time, and they have other commitments ongoing in 2026. So proposal is, if the board's supportive of the annexation policy, as well as the code amendment, we will bring those forward to you for adoption or welcome any additional feedback you may have. Happy to answer questions.
It sounds like most of the things that we discussed the last time you came forth and the board brought forward some changes and adjustments to the annexation policy. And as best I recollect, it sounds like we're on pretty good track for that. And obviously, we'd have the target to shoot at if something got missed in that when we get it to an actual actionable item. On the IGA piece and the pros and cons related to that, was that mostly weighed in regard to annexing of properties to be developed, or did it also include weighing of annexation of areas that are already developed, like Carriage Hills, for example, or other neighborhoods that are already well developed? Or was it all and everything that was weighed in that consideration?
Yeah, Mayor, the IGA is based on the model that Larimer County uses with other communities. Those are largely based on development, driving annexation, and not annexation of developed areas, so that it's really not considered in those IGAs.
But back to the annexation policy then, the annexation policy would inscribe a disciplined approach toward annexation, whether it was developed or not, correct?
Correct, I agree. The policy is probably the more appropriate place to address annexation of developed areas.
Okay, understood.
Okay, I've got a couple of questions. Do we maintain any sort of database on properties for which we have these water agreements where they agree to annex should they become eligible?
That's a great question I have been thinking about and was planning to coordinate with the Utilities Department, because those agreements are really administered by them. So I think there could be a partnership with community development to better track those and map those.
I'd really like to have that mapped and figured out, so that, because otherwise we're going blind as to what we can and can't annex. And if there are places we could annex that would make sense, we can't figure that out unless we have that database to make that analysis. So I would like to see us do that. Another item is we got some public comment on the IGA issue, and maybe it was the ordinance issue also, about why we don't have anything discussing zoning for something that is annexed. Could you discuss that and how that fits together with either the ordinance or the IGA?
Yeah, I believe I've seen the public comment was referring to the annexation policy and a desire to have some guidance or criteria for establishment of zoning with the annexation. I think our thought process is the development code standards for rezoning could be used as a guideline for that, especially with the amendments that are forthcoming to those standards. I think those would provide a robust criteria checklist to look at to apply to zoning. Also,
I think that'll be a very, very hot issue when it comes up in the development code rewrite. And so I think it's pretty important that we have good data entering into that to be able to evaluate what it really means moving forward on annexation. So, and finally, it seems pretty clear to me the county doesn't really want an IGA. Is that really what's going on? It just seems like, and I guess the question is I'm not sure I understand the benefits or detriments of an IGA in the context of annexation, which I understand is largely a municipality issue and not so much a county
Town
issue.
administrator.
I can provide a little high-level context here. So the county has pursued growth management, IGAs, with many communities. And typically, as Senior Planner Hornbeck mentioned, it's communities with room to grow, and often communities that are growing rather quickly. So if you look at, we'll take the city of Fort Collins as an example, their growth management area, through their agreement with the county, is much larger than in the incorporated city. And the reason that it makes public policy sense to have a growth management area is there may be items or developments that are far away from the city center, that the city limits, that will be incorporated one day. They know they will be incorporated one day. The city has a public policy interest to not have a bunch of really rural development that doesn't meet their standards happen, that they will one day intend to annex, because then they have to go through, and you have the problem that we often see in our community where it becomes prohibitive to do so because you have to bring all of the infrastructure up to the city standards. So recognizing that challenge, the county and the city worked together and said, okay, where do we want to draw the line? What's going to be the city one day? What's not going to be the city? And any development that happens within those boundaries, even if it's outside city limits, has to come up to city standards. So you're effectively ensuring that you're not building these communities that one day will be extremely difficult to bring into the city limits because of the breakdown. We don't really have that here. We don't have large new subdivisions that are happening on our urban fringe. So most of the Estes Valley is built out, and we're really looking at infill and potential redevelopments. So you don't have this same challenge necessarily that we're seeing in Loveland or Fort Collins, where there are new subdivisions, new homes going up, and they want to make sure that if there are proposals in unincorporated Larimer County, that they're comporting with the standards of the city with which they have an agreement.
Yeah, and the difference here is we have a lot of unincorporated area that's already developed. And, you know, it is not required for us to annex it and require them to bring it up to current standards should we decide to waive that. And I can imagine that there would be many circumstances in which we would choose to do that, simply because you don't require redevelopment of an already developed neighborhood if it's, unless someone's planning to redevelop it. So, I don't know, I just would like to see us be able to evaluate annexation on fully developed areas. I know it would be somewhat unpopular in some cases, and it might not make sense for the town to do it for other reasons, for sure. But I just feel like we're operating without a real good sense of what is possible.
And I suggest that those conversations are likely to be town conversations at a certain level, because they're broader policy conversations that really pertain to the town's municipal powers, and less so conversations that are necessarily bringing the county in, because we're looking well beyond municipal boundaries at potential new developments. So there is a distinction there, and I think that's where you're hearing the respective community development departments question whether there is a need for an IGA like Larimer County has with the other communities.
And I think there would be some benefit to the town of having an IGA insofar as we'd have some measure of input and control over what's happening in the county areas that are effectively part of our community. So I think we should probably push for it on some basis so that we, don't have the risk in the future, not that they'd necessarily do it this way, of allowing development in a way that doesn't fit with our comprehensive plan and the ongoing community development. So even if they're reluctant to do it, I just think that there might be some benefit to us as a town in governance to have it. So
I would agree if at any point we diverge from a shared comprehensive plan. Right now, I believe, Paul, the county is regulating to our shared comp plan. So at a point in the future, and the board could set a policy that says if we ever diverge, or the county ever diverges from that comp plan, that we restart those IGA conversations, because I think at that point there would be a vested interest in making sure that we're heavily involved in, you know, what's going on with how the county's changing their vision for the valley if they're doing it without connecting with us. You never know what's going to happen in the future. I don't think the county as it operates now would go off the joint comprehensive plan we have.
Okay, so they've committed to doing that by adopting on their behalf the comprehensive plan? Okay,
Correct?
got it.
They do have it
Yeah,
adopted.
that should be sufficient. Yeah.
I can add one additional comment on that is county staff and town staff have a good relationship, and I think, work cooperatively now. We refer land use applications to one another. We're in the loop of what's happening, and if a cement
Well,
plant
let us
were-
know if that changes.
Okay.
I like your point, Town Administrator Mahalik, as far as putting something in there for a stop. You know, if things change down the road, because it could get lost, right? And the two parties kind of do their own thing on the comp plan, and then, oh gosh, that's right, we have to talk about annexation. But if we have something in our policy that can help trigger that down the road, maybe down the road we aren't working quite so well together. You just never know. So I'd like to see that in there to the effect if things change differently now, then we can bring that subject back up.
Planner Hornbeck, do you think that it would be appropriate to include that within the annexation policy if the board determines that we don't see a necessity for an intergovernmental agreement right now, but if the county ever moves away from a joint comprehensive plan from the Estes Valley for whatever reason, the town will initiate conversations about an intergovernmental agreement related to annexation?
I think that's appropriate and doable.
I have no other questions. It looks to me like we've run the gamut on that. You also, I think, have appropriate guidance on the annexation policy for bringing it back for an actionable item. So I think we've fulfilled the purpose of your session, correct?
I believe so. Thank you.
Okay, all right.
Thanks.
Thanks, folks, for the flexibility. We're at an interesting place, but we do have a break for dinner here right now, and I believe we had that delivered a couple minutes ago. So we're going to pause this study session for, I will say, 15 minutes, and we'll resume at 5:30. IT, we're still on hold until Trustee Eigel returns and gives us a quorum. We are going to resume this study session of the Town Board of Estes Park, October 28th, 2025. We made agenda changes flexibly along the way, and it worked out quite nicely because we have a little bit more time for the final presentation and discussion on our agenda, which is the post office operational perspective. I'll make a couple of prefacing comments first. We'll not necessarily be discussing, or we will not be discussing, the space constraint study that the town is helping to prepare and working with Joe Negus's, Congressman Negus's office on getting that put in to reinforce the potential that in some future year the feds will grant the opportunity to move our post office to a better, more accessible place in town with lots of parking and a lot of problems fall away. That's not just related to the parking. That is a longer-term project that we're assisting with. The post office also has, I think, submitted through, I believe, Senator Marchman's office, State Senator Marchman, another similar but not a space constraint study, and that's what we're working with Congressman Negus's office on. But again, that's probably a long-term type of thing that will not only help with parking issues of the future, but it would also help with a more modern and roomy post office for the functions and the great services that our postal employees provide with us. So this topic that we'll be getting into here became a topic after the board made changes in April to, I believe it was 842, was that what it was? That banned the commercial, how do you say it, Travis?
The commercial loading permit is a future study session item on November 24th.
Correct. And so this is kind of a prefacing presentation so that the board has the opportunity to really understand from the postal perspective what additional challenges were created, the complexities, and it certainly does interact with the space constraints that the post office feels, but it's a broader and deeper topic. And with that being said, we have a couple folks here. We have, who is the primary presenter? Is that going to be Robin, Starr, both? And I think we also have other subject matter experts who may contribute along the way, depending on the nature of the questions that come up. We also, I believe, might have other public comment opportunity. Is that correct, related to the folks who have given us some of the written comments?
Mayor, there have been written comments delivered, and I suspect there are folks in the audience who are interested. As you know, the town board, with a majority vote of the board, or a majority consensus of the board, excuse me, are allowed to take public comment at a study session.
We will make that decision at that point, but first we will give the floor to Star and Robin and their team, and so you can come forth and begin. Now, we did receive a 32-page, and it is in the packet, not presentation, but a document that described many things, including some of the complexities and challenges, as well as a couple of suggestions of solutions. I think that the good folks of the post office have put forth. But the whole purpose of this is for us to really understand what it looks like from their perspective. I'll make one final comment and turn it over to them. Make sure to turn your green light on too for the comments there when you get ready to do it. But I will again applaud our local post office and our postal carriers. You remember the old through rain, sleet, snow, they're going to get the mail through, and they do. I feel that they do a terrific job. It's a very difficult job, and I think they'll be showing us all of the different dimensions of that complexity. They won't cover everything that's in that 32-page document. I think they'll be a little more concise, and then we'll have plenty of time for Q&A and understanding of what we've got. So I still don't see your green light on. There we go. We now have a green light, and the floor is all yours.
I think we're in the wrong presentation, though. Is it the PC presentation? If it's loud. Is this good?
Your verbal commentary, if you need to read it from a hard copy or from the local laptop there, we're flexible and can accept that information into the public record that way too. So whatever needs to be done, we'll do. Although I know you have some nice graphics and things. Yeah. Hey, there you go. Yep, there you go.
Cool. Do we have to introduce ourselves first, or we just?
Sure.
Okay, I'm Star Gilmore, and I'm a carrier at the post office.
And I'm Robin Scritchfield, and I'm also a carrier at the post office.
So thank you for giving us an opportunity to talk tonight about parking and the post office. And we've managed to meet with some of you, and we're grateful for your interest.
And as best you can, whoever is speaking, yeah, get that microphone as close to you as you can.
Okay.
While some of the folks have very young and agile ears, some others out there do not. Yeah.
All right, so thank you. And we're grateful for the opportunity to talk tonight. I'd like to draw your attention to the 4 delivery elves in the room. We have one right there, and one in the back by the door, and then here's one, and one back there. Now draw a line from elf to elf, and the rectangle that creates is about 670 square feet, and that's the space in the post office for sorting packages. So every piece of mail and package that comes into the post office comes off the box truck into an area this size, gets sorted, and then is sent back out for delivery or to a post office box. On our busiest day this summer, 3,280 packages came into an area this size, were sorted and sent back out. And that's about 4 box truck loads up and down the mountain. Now, on that particular day, some of your carriers worked 12 hours to deliver those mail and packages. And mail delivery is not a 9-to-5 job. So your carriers work until every piece is delivered.
And the 3,280 packages on the biggest day, but you also had a lot of letters too, right?
Yes, letters, magazines, all of that.
All of the above.
Estes Park is very lucky to have, Estes Park is very lucky to have dedicated contract mail delivery staff and the system. Many towns do not enjoy the high level of service that the residents and the businesses of Estes receive every day. Unfortunately, Estes does not have a luxury that most other towns do have, and those towns have, other towns have space that they need to work in, and we do not. It's also safe to work in. It has sufficient internal and external working space, and secure parking and loading zones for the contractors and the employees to perform their daily jobs.
So I imagine that it seemed simple in the beginning of the summer. You imagine that your carrier would go from home to the museum annex parking lot, jump in a delivery van, drive to the post office, do their job, go back to the museum annex lot, and then go home. But in reality, the delivery system is far more complex. That this scenario I just described is only followed by 38% of the routes. And if you look on page 19 of the report that we gave you, it describes some of the other route management strategies.
In 2024, the Estes mail carriers delivered over 3.6 million pieces of mail. That's actually about 16,000 feet and thousands of packages. Your carriers deliver tires, sinks, kitchen sinks, some home goods, food, and for people and for pets,
and vital life-saving medications. Remember the postal creed, like you mentioned, the unofficial motto, neither snow, nor rain, nor heat, nor gloom of night stops the couriers from the swift completion of their appointed rounds. Your postal delivery contractors live that creed every day to make this happen for the benefit of all those who receive mail in Estes. By changing the parking ordinance in April of 2025 to force the contractors to a different parking area and complicate our workflow, it now costs, on an average, an additional 655 miles and 90 hours per month to accomplish the service for all of you. If you want to look on page 13, we have more details of how that works. The contractors do not enjoy federal benefits or retirement programs or insurance or anything like that. All of the extra costs that are moved due to the cost of moving our parking across town are not reimbursed and come out of the pockets of the contractors. We have encountered many additional challenges as the result of this change. If you look on page 25 and 26 in that big document, there's some details about some tragedies that have occurred and the coping strategies that the carriers had to employ.
So I'm going to start the stopwatch. Nausea, headaches, confusion, faintness, muscle cramps. Any guess what these are the symptoms of? Heat exhaustion. It's heat exhaustion. And heat exhaustion is very prevalent among delivery people. It's so common that every morning when we sign on to our scanner, it says, hey, even healthy people can experience the symptoms of heat exhaustion. Know the symptoms. So what does heat exhaustion have to do with this slide? Carriers compete on a first-come, first-served basis for parking spots in that parking lot. There are no reserved loading spots. So when we parked overnight, carriers would park as close to the post office as they could get. And that reserved those close spots. And then in the morning, they could load quickly and easily. But now we park across town. So when we come into that parking lot, sometimes this is what we see. And those first spots across from the loading dock, they're taken by tourists. So one day I come into the lot and I can't find a parking spot close, and I go all the way to the end of the parking lot. And then I haul my cage to my car. Now those cages weigh 220 pounds empty. And when you add packages, you can be pulling something that's 400, 500 pounds, and you're dodging cars and trying not to get hit as you're going. When I got to the end of the parking lot, I was experiencing the symptoms of heat exhaustion. So I'm going to stop the stopwatch here. The amount of time that I've been talking is the amount of time it took me to haul that cage through the parking lot. If I had been able to park directly across from the loading dock, the amount of time would have been half. So parking overnight across town increases the risks to carriers because we are now at a disadvantage as we compete for those parking spots.
There are many factors that add great complexity to the delivery process. These include late delivery from the Front Range mail distribution centers in the delivery contracts, the changes that we have, and changes in the management of postal operations. For a more thorough description, you can see page 15 and 17. The ordinance change of this year is added on top of these many factors. We also deliver many packages from the UPS and the FedEx. 90% of Amazon packages that show up on your doorstep, well, they're delivered by your mail carrier, not by Amazon. All of these things must be coordinated along with arranging multiple vehicles among multiple carriers. If you add the parking restrictions, it increases the complexity significantly.
So if we understand correctly, the motivation of the town when they approved the commercial loading permits was to preserve a certain number of parking spots for tourists. Is preserving those parking spots for tourists worth degrading the on-street delivery services to the residents and businesses of the town? If the motivation is to placate certain business owners, how is that in sync with the comments from the town itself about the financial aspects of paid parking? And that's on page 7 of the report where we discuss that further. If you look on pages 22 through 24, the green in those charts represents the number of parking spots that carriers do not use in front of the post office. And there's quite a few, so we're kind of questioning, is the impact as great as it has been indicated to be? Now, unfortunately, the additional costs and pressures of parking across town occur year-round. So through summer heat and winter snow, we expect to continue to lose experienced contractors. If you see page 12, contractor turnover this year is about 66%, and that's a huge number. The increased challenges of parking across town are a contributing factor to that turnover because of the additional burdens on carriers. Now, there's a lot more in the published document that we provided, and we encourage you to read it, and we'll be happy to come back to future board sessions and study sessions to provide more information.
Finally, we have several proposed solutions for the board to consider, starting on page 5. These include, at a high level, first, just eliminate the restrictions of overnight parking, period. Or you could just exempt the postal contractors from the ordinance change. Or you could allow overnight parking in the Davis lot, which is actually closer to the post office than the museum annex. Or you could allow overnight parking in these 10 spots on East Riverside. We are your public servants, and we're helping you and all other residents and businesses of Estes Park every day. We're dedicated, and we're happy to do this. But please consider helping us provide this service in the most efficient and effective way possible. We would like to invite you, the mayor, and the trustees of the town on a tour of the post office in November, and you can see firsthand some of the challenges that we have to encounter. Thank you. If there's any questions, we try to answer them.
I have a lot of questions. Because I think that we have to find a solution for this. We have to find a way to support the postal carriers, because I think the infrastructure that the post office and mail provides to the community is critical. And I agree with so much of what you say. And there are a few things that I also encounter driving to work and going through town, and I don't have to go back and forth the maximum number that you discuss, but I do go back and forth 3 or 4 or 5 times, so I get it. I understand it. But I think that we can work together to figure out a way to make this work better. I do not represent the town as a whole. I do not represent the parking and transit, but being a user of the system and having seen the inside of the post office and having seen the challenges and having relationships, understanding how we need to work together as a business and post office, I want to be supportive. So don't take my questions as an attack or being critical of what's going on here. The part that I remember talking about that was a very high impact piece of the puzzle for me was the potential of a delivery vehicle, a personal vehicle, and a second personal vehicle, which could be 30 spaces out of that lot. How many spaces are in that lot? 88.
Yeah, 88.
88. So even if it was 10 or if it was 20, because one of the parts of your package that had a lot of information was the real reason for no overnight parking. And this is as described in a presentation that you provided to us. And that was that the whole reason for no overnight parking was to preserve the parking the next day from the impact of the carrier's vehicles plus the delivery vehicles. So I would like to understand better what the potential impact of that is. If it was 5 vehicles and then, so that was 10 vehicles because of the carrier, but on some days there might be 2 personal vehicles. Do you see where my math is going with the potential of being 30 vehicles? That was one of the pieces of data that had an impact on my decision before, to take 30 spaces out of that lot. And that seemed like it was reasonable, and it had the potential for happening. And if you give someone that much, when we give each other an inch, we take a mile, because we do. I think we have to be mindful of the impact on parking that is at such a critical mass, we hear, that we need every single space we can get. So I think the compromise is in between that 0 spaces and 30 spaces of dedicated spots that you can use to load. I watched the carriers go across the lot, and it looks kind of exciting to push a cart full of boxes from my 8,000-pound vehicle. And I would not want to do that every day as part of my job. And I also don't want you to drop my things, and I don't want you to drop my neighbor's things, and I don't want you to lose things. So I want to be supportive of getting the job done right. I appreciate that you would come and present this information, but the questions I've asked maybe are to just frame where I'm going to go with remarks and a perspective that I will share. I'm not asking you for answers right now, but I want you to know my position on this, that I want to be supportive, but also balance the needs of all the businesses, visitors, and public going to the post office. So I'm not looking for answers as much as I am. Okay, I'm ready then. I'm ready.
I think your first question, if I understood, was like how many parking spots are we taking up? Is that correct?
What's the potential use of the vehicles for the carriers, personal and delivery vehicles?
Okay. And I think that's on page 23 of the report, and that would be on Mondays after holidays and after Amazon Prime days, because that's when we have the most people working at the post office.
We have
And
extra people coming in to help
right,
us.
because there'll be, oh, go ahead.
So what would that number be at the peak like that?
Around 8 p.m., we have a peak of 10 delivery vehicles, and around 10 a.m., a peak of 14 personal vehicles. And then on average, 2 of the backup vehicles are pulled in to work and deliver packages.
So that's 26.
And that occurs, and then by about, if you look at it, about noon, it starts decreasing down. And that's assuming that that first graph on there assumes that we are parking overnight in front of the post office. The second graph just shows our usage if we're not.
So that decrease that begins to happen later in the morning is because you start going out on the rounds actually and are moving the delivery vehicles throughout town, but on albeit different schedules, every one of them.
Right, and also the extra people who are work in the mornings.
They're
And
just sorting them.
yeah, they're sorting mail, or they just do a package run to lighten the load, and then they're gone. Does that answer your question?
It does. So it's not a potential reduction in vehicles, it's an actual reduction in vehicles where you wouldn't use 30 spaces or 26 because you could, because those vehicles are going out and leaving. One way or the other, though, there will be a personal vehicle or a delivery vehicle for each route in the parking lot all day.
No, let me.
Where would the carrier's personal vehicle be in this scenario?
Well, not all people drive a personal vehicle to work. There are.
There's only 8 that will
Yeah.
stay overnight.
There's 8 people. Actually, let me find the actual numbers.
You've answered the question I have as a concept, so I appreciate that. I don't want to burden you with the details.
Okay.
And I don't want to take all the time here, so I'm going to listen to what else comes out.
If we parked in that lot right there, most of the days, not including a Monday, because you're going to have a carrier needing some extra help and they have a personal car, and they're going to come in and they're going to go in the post office, they're going to sort the mail, and they're going to leave in 2 hours. So their personal car is going to be in there from 7:30 to 10, and then they're out. Nobody's there till 11 if they're just sorting the mail. So they're not even there for 4 hours. So they're gone. But in that lot, if we actually parked the overnight vehicles in that lot, the carrier will bring their personal car and park in one of the extra spots, because there's only gonna be 8 overnight vehicles. You'll have a person come in and park their personal car, they'll take the van and they'll go over and load it. The next carrier comes in with his personal car, he'll park in that lot. So the actual parking lot of the post office doesn't have our personal or the mail vans unless we're actually loading
Which
them.
lot is that you're showing here?
The East Riverside. Yeah, but we also have the 4 delivery vans, and those are 4 backup vans, and those wouldn't fit in those 10 spots.
We could park those off-site, we could put them in Davis lot. That's mainly, we use them for, like on a Monday, if we need 2 vans running packages, because there's so many. If we don't, we would be out until 11 o'clock at night, every Monday. So we hire, on our own time, we hire somebody to help us deliver some of the packages. Somebody else might be inside sorting the mail. So that's why we have more people on a Monday. But they're not always there, and they don't stay there all day long either. They're gone by 11.
I've got a couple questions or just observations. And I too think, your service is very important to our community. However, you're self-employed, but you're an employee of the post office, right? Well, that's who you work for.
Right.
Right, I understand that, but that's who you take direction from and have to answer to, right?
Correct.
So I'm wondering, how much have you sent your superiors this information? Have you shown them, have you talked to them to help with communication about how we are in need of a different facility? We are in need of parking, things like that. Because it's this information that would be very valuable for them to have as well. In a normal, if they were your employer and not a self-employed worker as you would, that's who you would go to, right? Say, hey, these working conditions aren't good. This is what we're facing. We're outpacing this post office by 2-fold, right? The other thing I was wondering is, I know there's smaller communities that your Amazon and your other carriers do service. So I'm wondering, has there been any communication that with those businesses about, to put Estes on the radar? Have you thought of bringing vans up? Have you thought this is really hard for our small community and carriers to be delivering this massive packages? We want you to know that it's a problem here, and we would like to see eventually bring some vans up from Amazon. I think communication here, it's not just to the town, but it needs to be out to those partners that that affect you guys so much, right? The other comment I have is, I've driven around and there's been cones put in parking spots. And they're there through the day. And I'm like, well, do you guys put cones there so that when you come back, you can get your parking spot?
Is that recently? Because we don't do cones, but they
Okay.
were doing construction in that parking lot?
Yeah, it was before, I've seen it before the construction, and I've just often wondered,
No.
who's
town-
got a
that's how the
cone that
town
they
had-
take it out of their car and
town
put it
had
there to save their spot?
okay to do that.
So that was just, something I've noticed. It's not somewhere I drive every day, but I have seen that. So I'm not sure if that is any of the carriers doing that
No, but during the construction, that was one of the solutions the town proposed.
Right, yeah,
So we did it during that time period.
Yeah.
But not since
not
they
s-
finished.
before that, okay,
Yeah.
okay. That's all I have for right now.
I can
Thanks.
answer some of your questions.
That would be great, thanks.
As far as passing the report on to people further up in the U.S. Postal Service, we have requested that that be done. I don't have any feedback as of right now, how that has gone. And that's also why I was so keen to have the report available after it was archived, because some people might be furloughed right now. And we want to be able to pass it on going forward.
Mayor, Trustee Youngland, I'll just note that this report is full of information that's extremely helpful, and town staff does anticipate bringing the town board a letter to send to not only our congressional delegation, but the U.S. Postal Service to push forward on the space needs assessment. I believe a parking needs assessment has been initiated, but to push on a space needs assessment as well, and it gives us much more information that will be helpful in getting our congressional delegation activated to assist the post office in relocating this to a space that works better for our community, for the carriers, and for the town.
Back to the Amazon, UPS, FedEx question that Trustee Youngland was asking. I believe those contracts are probably not negotiated at the local level. That's probably
Yeah.
a national contract.
Yeah, we hear rumors all the time of Amazon starting service up here. They're going to put in a warehouse and, they're going to start coming up, but we have no idea, really.
We don't really have the luxury of saying we're not going to deliver that package. We don't want to deliver those packages. If we said that, then nobody in town would get Amazon because.
No, and I know that and I appreciate, but what I'm just saying is to be, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? So I realize that those decisions are made higher up, but without, you guys pushing in your campaigning for this issue, they don't know unless you guys speak up. This is an issue. Even if we had the parking, it's a big thing for you guys. I can't imagine. I just can't imagine how many packages you guys must have to, the strength and the awkwardness and the icy sidewalks. And, I just think that you need to be advocating in your behalf to your superiors and to the upper for Amazon to listen. If nobody says anything, nobody's going to hear you and won't even contemplate, okay, I've heard them. How can we make this work? So that's all I'm saying is I understand they're a huge corporation and you have to get to the top to make anything happen. But you have a voice and those voices need to be pushed in that direction as well.
And Trustee Youngland, I'll speak to that a little bit also. I think, for example, from a federal government standpoint, the sound of the wheels at our national Congress and our national level right now is such a screeching cacophony that little Estes Park asking for some concession or change, yeah, you got to do it. You got to raise it. Your superiors have to be willing to push on it. And I think we have to be willing to push on it too, because they are our servants. They're our public servants doing this, and we're their public servants trying to help bring solution. For Amazon, FedEx, and UPS, like you say, major corporations, and probably also experiencing challenges in the inflationary and challenged financial markets these days too. So how we get that attention, I think the space constraint study and the parking needs study are wonderful things. The information these two and the folks have provided really helps our case in getting that through our congressman's office and really help make that squeak a little bit louder. And speaking of squeaking,
Oh, that's
anyway, did you
officer.
have additional comments on that piece or?
No, thank you, though.
Trustee Youngland, did you have a follow-up?
Too slow. I have a couple other follow-up questions, just real quick before Trustee Brown gets going. With regard to the Davis lot, I recognize it's closer, but that's the front door for several businesses. And I wonder about the suitability of that. So my initial reaction to that is, it may not, we might not accomplish anything by just shifting it over there. So I wouldn't think we would get too set on that. There are spaces in one of your slides that I can't control your slides on your image here, but in front of the post office, maybe it's 37. There are spaces adjacent to that building on that property in the full control of the post office. Are there 4, 5, 6 spaces there? What is the availability of those spaces to you for business commerce activity versus, I am guessing, the post office staff parking there for convenience? Are those available to carriers for use?
So there are 3 spots in front of the post office, and then there's one in front of the dumpster there. And the carriers use the one in front of the dumpster quite a bit, and it's very important in the winter because parking there means you don't have to try to get those little tiny wheels through all the snow and ice in that dip. The other 3 are not as suitable. We used them quite a bit for loading during construction because those were available, but there's a good slant on 2 of those. And I know I, for one, have had my foot hooked under the wheel of the cart while I'm scrambling around trying to find a stick to stick in there so it doesn't roll away from me. And especially in the summer, they'll roll down towards people who are walking back and forth.
But those are available in this conversation with the post office management, or they are not available in the conversation?
Those are on the post office property.
Yes, that's why they're attractive.
Yeah. And so often those are used by the postal employees. There's another reason carriers don't use those, and it's because you have to back down the sidewalk with your car full and you have just 2 side mirrors, and there's people who use that sidewalk. So those are actually very difficult and dangerous to use.
I'm just trying to look at options here.
Oh, okay.
And,
have I answered your question?
yes. Reed, can you speak in the microphone, and then it'll be on the record and people watching can
Yeah,
hear.
I can speak to those 3 spots. Those are all claimed by USPS management. We are not allowed to use those consistently as carriers because they would have to then park in the post office parking lot, somebody is going to take
But
up
as an
spaces.
employee, it may be a different situation where they're not carriers. They are like any other person that
So
lives
there's
in
the
town.
postmaster, she has a spot, supervisor has a spot, and the next in line, whoever the lead clerk has a spot. So those are designated as their spots.
And that's potentially something that you
I
folks
just
in the
wanted to
post
hear if
office
it's part
could
of the
work out.
conversation.
Yeah.
Do you have a sense that the post office, I feel like there are 2 entities here, the post office and the carriers.
Correct.
And do you have a sense that the post office is supportive of the carriers to find a solution
Absolutely.
in this problem?
Absolutely.
Good.
Yes.
I have also had that sense.
Yes. Yeah, the current
so-
post office management is very supportive.
Okay, and I will say the post office has been a nice place to go for months, if not a couple years. We spend tens of thousands of dollars shipping there, and the service there has increased tremendously. I just wonder how able they are to work with you on this problem to a solution.
Yes.
Okay, so the last question that I have then before I give it up to Trustee Brown is, if you could go to the parking lot, and I have no jurisdiction here, and you could identify a certain number of spots in a location that would support you completely, that you could safely get to a spot, you could load, it would be dedicated to you for certain hours, perhaps. I don't know what the logistics are, but what is that number of spots, realistically? Maybe think about that and get back. But I'm trying to envision a space that the postal carriers can use. They can count on that you don't have to worry about parking, traffic, dodging cars. What does that look like? So it's just something to contemplate. Yeah, because if you say a number now, someone will hold it against you. It's either going to
not
be
gonna
good or,
say-
I wouldn't either. I would
We're
not
not
say
going to say a
number.
number now, but I will say that some of the other businesses in the parking lot might enjoy having parking spots that turn over more, like the bookstore. So one of our ideas was if we had spots that just said, 30-minute parking, postal vehicles exempted. Then while we're not in that parking lot, those spots are turning over for the bookstore. And then when we come back, then we have someplace to park.
See, those are suggestions and ideas that I want to hear from you because you experience it every day. That's what I thought was missing from the conversation before. But what are the solutions that carriers are proposing? And so for you to put that, that's a really specific, tangible thing that someone can think about. So I would like to see a list of those things that can be, you can just leave that on too.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I don't want to, yeah.
I was just gonna say, it's kind of like using the ones that are already in front of the post office for the customers. There's, I don't know how many there are, there's probably 10 or 15 of them, and they actually say 30 minutes. That's kind of what she's talking about. If we could pull in there and load the car, and then when we're done, we'll leave, and somebody else can park there for 30 minutes and run in and do their business at the post office. And then when we come back, or the bookstore, yeah, it depends on where it's at, but that would free up area for them to do what they need to in that 30 minutes also.
I don't know what the logistics are of it, but I know that there are a lot of people who are interested in this succeeding, and they're all listening right now, and they're all making notes and paying attention to trying to come to a solution, so thank you.
Yeah, that was that, and there's probably several other very creative ideas. Bill?
Sorry to do this retroactively, but can I just have you introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Reed Richard. I'm a mail carrier.
So I've got a couple of questions and then a number of thoughts, but for a typical, give me a sense of how many contract carriers are we talking about that are contract carriers for this post office? And how many trips back and forth during a day would they typically make in order to do their rounds? And also, I think you've given us a little preview of this, the hours that they're typically there. Obviously, they could be there till midnight, but in the typical day, it sounds to me like there's probably more traffic from your contractors during the morning hours than there is in the afternoon and evening, except when you have these extraordinary circumstances where there's a whole lot to deliver and you can't get it done in that time frame, right?
Correct.
Yeah, just to give you an example, the last post-Monday holiday, I was in the post office 7 hours before I could leave.
And you were sorting.
I was sorting mail,
Yep.
magazines, catalogs, newspapers, and marking, loading packages. So 7 hours before I could even leave.
So the employees of the post office
then
do
4.5
not do the
hours out
sorting?
delivering, so.
You do the sorting? Okay.
Their clerks sort initially when it arrives to the route, and then we take it from there and sort by address to address.
Oh, yeah. So they
So to
they
answer your-
divide it into routes.
Yeah, so to
And
answer
then
your
you have
question,
to sort it
there's
after
10,
that.
there's 10
Okay.
routes or 10 contractors.
10
Right.
country, okay.
But there's, well, not 10 contractors because Robin actually has 3 of them, but there's
Right.
10 of them.
10 routes. Yeah.
Right. And then there's, I don't know, up to maybe 14 people working to sort mail and packages on a heavy day.
But we're out by 11 or 12.
So on an average day, we're probably out of the post office by 12:30, 1 o'clock
Okay.
at the latest.
And then the heavy
But
days
there's
are there much
the
later.
heaviest days,
Yep.
I'd 3 o'clock or so.
Okay, great. So when I look at this, and I've seen your report, I've seen some of the commentary, I don't quite understand why we can't have overnight parking permits for the postal vehicles and then downtown worker permits for the personal vehicles. And it seems like what's happened is somehow that the delivery rules differ from a downtown worker's rules, even though you're in and out of there so often, you're more like a downtown worker than you are the typical delivery, which just drops something off at one point in time, like the big Coke truck, you know? You're really different than that. And you seem to me to be much more like a typical downtown worker there. And so it seems like, to me, it would make sense that you could get a downtown worker permit and a overnight parking permit for the actual delivery vehicles. And I don't understand why we can't do that.
Trustee Brown, that was the policy change earlier this year. The direct answer to the question is on page 23 of the report. And it's the difference between that, 26, 27 parking spaces occupied under the old rules and the 10 under the new rules.
Right.
Of course, you've heard tonight a bunch of the challenges that's resulted in, but that was the initial impetus behind the policy change.
Right. And honestly, I think part of the impetus was members of this town board would prefer to see the post office moved. And maybe that was in an effort to incentivize the government to do something about it. I mean, realistically, I think that's what happened here, without accounting for the resulting consequences to you guys. And so I really would like to support some approach such as what I just outlined with overnight parking permits for the delivery vehicles and downtown worker permits for the other people. It just seems, and maybe we dedicate an area particularly for the actual delivery vehicles that stay there overnight. And maybe we're going to have to specify even in signage, the hours that that those spots would be available for people other than the delivery vehicles. Not sure, I mean, that would be a difficult thing to work out, but that's what I'd like to see happen here. And it seems like it would, and I wanted to ask one kind of final question. So you presented some alternatives for solving this. In your opinion, what's the best solution? You can caucus about this.
We'd like it how it was before. We like your suggestion.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm afraid that we're going to move at the speed of government on this. And I drove, and this is a discussion, right? This is a study session, so we can throw ideas around here and just have a conversation. I drove by the museum annex. I will say that your vehicles look sharp over there, lined up in a row along one side of the parking lot. It's not sloppy like at the post office, parked all over the place. It looked organized. And then I got to the post office, and there was nobody in that lot. And I thought we are going into the off season, and I know we're going to be talking about this. And I wonder if there's a place that we can land to address this issue, not in a study session, but I perceive the winter being very frustrating and adding to insult to injury if we have a policy in place that takes months to change and another study session and another action item. And so I'm asking for logistical insight and support, and maybe Manager Klein has a thought on it. He's got, his pen is almost on fire back there. He is really engaged in this conversation, and you don't see it, but he is thinking. I'm afraid that we're going to move on from tonight and say, we're going to talk about this again in the future. And in the meantime, every day that these folks go to work, there are adequate spaces, traffic is down. What can we move faster than typical government speed on this to maybe have an on-season, off-season issue? Yeah, stop me, please. Interject.
Manager Klein, do you want to come up and give an overview of how this works in the off-season, and then I can weigh in on potential alternatives.
Yeah, because we do have a session in November, I believe, in a regular.
Yeah, but that's November and it's October and every day you go to work.
Mayor, Trustee Eigel, what I'm hearing from Trustee Eigel is, well, there's time needed to talk about the long-term, hopefully not long-term, medium-term solution until the postal facility is somewhere else. Trustee Eigel's expressing concern about the immediate future now that the pressure on the lot is reduced over the off-season. Is there a way we can find a path forward while we work through a potential
Thank
other
you, Town
alternatives?
Administrator.
And I would say based on the overnight observation that I did the week, just this past weekend, the 17th, 18th, there was adequate space at that lot, the Baldwin Park lot. But during that next day, I believe it did fill up. I can't give you exact numbers on that, but at certain points in the year, perhaps, after the leaves change and some of those things, there may be an opportunity where that lot does not exceed the 85th percentile, that we could do some type of hybrid program. I don't want to say yes for sure right now because I'd need to look at the analytical data from each weekend in October, but there is a point where it does slow down. You
Like
are
an
correct.
October to April solution or something.
November, but yeah.
Okay, well, I don't want to just say, okay, we're going to talk about that in a month. Can we
Manager
be a little
Klein,
more
Yeah, at this
definitive?
point, given what you know about the downtown lot and the pressures on the downtown lot, is it feasible that we could put the overnight parking restriction in the commercial loading permit into abeyance until the paid parking season starts this coming year? That gives us time to negotiate a longer-term solution and for the post office to go back to how they were operating and the other entities holding these permits back to how they were operating prior to this change. That may increase in the short term or on big holiday weekends. It may increase the potential for friction with business owners, but in the grand scheme of things, the pressure on those parking lots is reduced in the off-season.
Long question, short answer, yes. We could accommodate that during this time because we're not hitting the 85th percentile consistently during the weekdays.
So yeah, let's
So
focus
without
on
making decisions in this study
No,
session?
Mayor Trustee Eigel, what I'm gonna
I'm gonna let it
recommend is
go now.
that town staff turn it quick around, and I'll talk to Director Greer and Manager Klein tomorrow. A simple modification to policy 842, basically for the off-season to give us time to work through this longer challenge so that the postal contractors are not having to park off-site during the winter. And we'll bring that back to your next board meeting on the 12th of November so that it can happen much more quickly, knowing that we're not going to talk about the longer-term solution first until November 24th.
Yeah, that sounds great to me. It strikes me as similar to what we did with the wind signs, where, we knew that we were going to do the development code and that interacted with the wind sign regulations. And so we just took a pause on enforcement pending that discussion, which is kind of what I'm hearing here that makes a lot of sense. We got a lot of time where we really are not having the problem that generated the ordinance in the first place. So let's figure out how to deal with it going forward. And I would like to ask you all to consider what you think from your postal contractor standpoint is the best solution that accommodates your needs while not adversely impacting, the town usage of its parking lots during peak season. That's really what I'd like to hear.
And I would just like to piggyback on that, not just take the easy way out and say as before, because I don't think we can do that. But creative thinking, like you brought up, the 30-minute, things like that. The other thing I would like for you guys to explore too is, could those three, it just seems like those three vehicles, like would the trucks be able, the spare trucks or whatever, be able to be there? Everybody has a vested interest to make it right and to make, your job a little bit safer and easier. And that needs to be the employees of the post office as well. I mean, they have front row seats, right? So, you know, maybe those 3 vehicles use that parking over by the park and put those trucks or whatever. You know, don't forget those 3, I guess is what I'm saying. Because that's parking, that's, you know, their parking spots, and they should be able to be creative and help the solution and not just go, well, you know, I have high seats in the post office, I'm gonna park in front. You know what I'm saying? So don't forget those 3. I think they somehow can be utilized by you guys as well. They could just park a little bit further away from their front door.
And I think Trustee Eigel has one more question. I do want to mention that I was hoping to have the opportunity for brief 3-minute comments from a couple other folks, if the board would permit it in this session.
I'm interested.
Go ahead.
So a couple things. I really appreciate that, Manager Klein and Town Administrator Mahalik, that we're able to look at each other and come up with a workable thing, like this is government in action in a good way that's supportive of the community. And I don't think this is giving into a lot of letters. This feels like it's trying to find a solution that we need the post office, we need the service, we need quality, we need safety, all these things. So this type of quick action, I think, is a compliment or a testament to how local government does work well. So I really appreciate that publicly doing that. I have great parking behind my business, like 2 spaces, inches from the door. I choose often to park away when I know that there is going to be something coming up, there's going to be a need for the late shift coming in. We modify our parking every single day. I would encourage the postal carriers to think about that and use this opportunity, which sounds like may come together in the next few months, to think about little solutions that we can consider for long-term solutions, but also being thoughtful about if there's going to be 30 cars one day, maybe spreading them out or choosing parking lots that aren't going to be visible, high impact on visitors, other businesses. I think it's an opportunity to really show how everybody's working together and make it work long-term, because we still need to have a long-term conversation, but this is a great opportunity to show the community what you got. So thank you for all of your information.
Just one quick one. I'm looking at that picture of those 3 spots. And you said how difficult it is to back up with everything and they roll down. What if you back in? Isn't it looks to me more level, closer to the building, and creative, like, okay, if we put some cones out or something so the public would know they can't, you know, I mean, I would think you could park pretty darn close to onto that concrete, your front tires anyway, if you were backed up. I just look at those 3 spots and know there's something creative with those backing in solution, maybe. So just throwing that out.
Let's hold on that for a second. We're going to run out of the option for any other public comment. Is there other public comment that folks would like to make? I can give you 3 minutes, and I'll even try my cool little thing if Travis will monitor, because I won't be able to see when it actually gets to. Well, maybe it's not plugged in. Anyway, we'll do it the old-fashioned way. I'll do it on my timer. So go ahead. You need to state your name, address, and you'll have 3 minutes, and it's a hard 3 minutes.
Hello, I'm the owner of Green Jeep Tours, Nicole Schultz.
I'm Gina Stein, employee of Green Jeep Tours. Oh. In light of making accommodations for the short term with the post office, Green Jeep Tours was a fallout from the 824. So Nikki's been in business for 17 summer seasons, so it was quite a shock this season when we had to move the Jeeps from the parking lot, the Weiss parking lot right next to our bay, and move them over to the museum. It became quite burdensome for the drivers with their cars moving there, and then also it just added to more congestion downtown, making the loops. So if in the inner term, while you're figuring out the parking, we would also like to be considered during the off-season to park in the Weiss lot, which is much bigger and no overnight parking other than the downtown residents and also accommodations for the Airbnbs allowing short-term parking. So as a business, we feel like we should be entitled to have parking as well overnight, like we had.
And just to add for the off-season, we do have a few spots behind our office, which we use, but in the winter with snow, it's angled at like, it's literally angled like this. And with the snow, it's just the dangers of slipping, sliding, and it just turns into ice because there's no sun and it's a disaster back there with driving. And so having something in the winter would be very beneficial.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Are there other public comments?
Mayor, just to be clear, policy 842, that change for the post office would also apply to anybody else that holds a commercial loading permit.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. My name's Lars Wyka. I've lived in town since 2004. And I'll just say briefly, I'm a disabled first responder. So safety comes to my mind first. And I'm going to speak really quick for 3 minutes. Maybe you play this back and listen to it slower. Ms. Youngblood, Trustee Youngblood, I want to say a few things that perhaps people in this room might not be aware of. Number one, the post office is a service that's in the Constitution. It takes an act of Congress to change things, as you some know. Now, we've had our senators, we've had our congressmen up here, we've had the regional director up here when our community has complained about delivery issues. A lot of money has been spent. It's passionate to me. Congress also had talked about issues of rural carriers in mountains having to work the 10, 12, 14 hours that they do during the winter. Okay, now, safety. Consider this. That parking lot, and I know the parking has been the topic here, and the parking spaces for tourists. Historically, parking has always been available to the postal vehicles in that parking lot. The town chose to change that by an ordinance. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but I can imagine that if somebody were to die traveling back and forth, if a tourist were to die, I know of a person that's already been accosted by a cow elk during the mating season, and a worker. Any of those things could put our town at risk and liable and maybe negligent. I don't know. I'd hate to see that happen to the town. As far as those 3 spaces, we don't know if the postmaster and the postal union have rights to those spaces that the contract carriers do not. Then there's OSHA. It's already been stated that heavy cargo unit had to roll over somebody's foot. It is not level. There are many safety issues. There is bad weather. There is tripping on ice. There is falling on ice. These carriers are not covered under workman's compensation. Would a lawyer look back into the town? We wouldn't want any of that. The town has always allowed parking. I appreciate everybody who spoke here, especially our trustees and boards. These women who have done this on their own time, not paid. They're on a contract, flat rate. They don't get paid overtime. They don't get paid to put this proposal on. They
At
spend a lot
15
of time,
seconds.
weeks, months. I appreciate everybody for listening, the great ideas coming together, maybe fast tracking, winter parking. Thank you. I just would like you all to give that some thought. Safety first.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment on the topic? Yes, sir. And this will have to be our last public comment. We'll have to do our wrap-up of the study session and get ready for the board meeting.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for taking the time to listen. Mine is going to be much quicker. This is something I think it'll be better to discuss.
Name and
Little bit
address really quickly.
Sorry, my name is Sam Tannenbaum, and I'm with Wildside 4x4 Tours. But I'd like to discuss this a little later in the future because I don't want to take away from this. This is much bigger than ours, but we're just looking for one overnight parking space. Just one. I'll go more elaborate at a later date in time, when there's more time to do so.
Thank you. And I think the town administrator already referenced that if we come up with a short-term solution here for these winter months, that likely addressed. Anyway, we'll move on at this point.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Thank you for your patience in getting to that. At this point, we can move to any future study session items, and Travis, you first.
Nothing from me tonight, Mayor, other than to let the board know that it's likely that the addressing housing needs for town employees will come as a report and discussion item instead of a study session, given the extremely full study sessions we have between now and the end of the year.
Right. I have one item. I'm not sure whether it's a study session item or not, but there's been consideration. I've had several queries about a couple of couples who have provided lifetime of service to Estes Park in many different ways. And there was the question of whether or not we could do like a plaque or something on occasion, not as a regular thing. And I'm not sure quite how to operate that within the bounds of discussion with the town and within our signage type of thing as to whether we would have like a plaque, for example, for some of these long-term couples in town hall. And I've talked about it briefly with Travis, but it's something that might have value, but without going crazy and having thousands of applications for that.
Mayor, as we talk through this, I may suggest a study session would be an appropriate place, and we could talk about the art in public places policy, which talks about installations in town hall / honoring civic service in town.
And this is not something urgent. I think the things we have on our upcoming ones are more urgent. So at some time during the winter, maybe we can slot a brief discussion on that. Okay, enough said. This study session is adjourned. We will be back at 7 p.m. sharp for the board meeting.